Hello, everyone, and welcome to an amazing conversation. Today, there is myself, Nickita Starck, founder of When Push Comes to Shove, and we have Ben Hunt and Phil Escott from the Big Fat Challenge. Hello.
Hello, Nikita.
How
So
are you
we've
both
known
doing?
each other for a little while, haven't we? Because we interviewed you probably 3 or 4 years ago now as well
Mhm.
about that. So um, I know. Do you want to? Because right, guys, this is what's really weird here because this is going out to Nikita's audience on Substack and whatever, and also to ours. So we're trying to do it as a two-way thing. So Nikita, for the sake of people from our audience who don't know you yet, and they're about to know you, do you want to just describe briefly who you are, where you've come from, and what you know?
Good idea. Okay, so I'm Nickita Starck. I am founder of When Push Comes to Shove, and that is the world's only, as far as I know, decentralized maternity structure. We provide women in 10 countries now with holistic, non clinical care. I train people to become natural birth practitioners, birth keepers, and I educate women on birth education. If you think this doesn't apply to you, think again because everything starts at birth. And I wanted to chat to these awesome guys today because a huge part of maternity education is nutrition, something that is sorely lacking within systemic care. So, Phil, Ben, do you want to introduce yourself to my audience? I'm sure most of them know who you are already, but please do.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm Phil Escott, and I had a big awakening about health and diet and lifestyle back in 2010, having thought that I was a great expert on everything to do with that. Wrote books on plant-based eating. I was eating sort of plant-based diets for 30 odd years and ended up crippled with rheumatoid arthritis, thinking, how on earth did that happen? And I had to throw out everything I thought I knew. And since sort of 2011, it's been an amazing journey of discovering our true ancestral nature and what we're supposed to eat, what we're supposed to do. And I mean, loads of the stuff that you do, Nikita, is harks back to the times when childbirth was not an illness. And so I think this all ties in beautifully in with the ancestral stuff. And so since then, I've been fully carnivore and haven't eaten a vegetable at all since 2015. And I'm still not dead, and I've still not got scurvy, and nothing's happened except loads of health benefits. And so now I do consults for people privately, have a YouTube channel and big Facebook carnivore group, and run the Big Fat Challenge with Ben, where we offer all sorts of support to people and resources that they can get, when it's not on the Zoom calls. And there we go. That's me. Over to Ben.
I'm Ben Hunt. I arrived at this point via a different rabbit hole to Phil because I used to be mad about growing. I was completely convinced that there was too much carbon dioxide in the air, like a lot of people do today, and that I got really passionate about soil and building soil and growing vegetables, and I thought that was the way to go. I designed and built my own greenhouse. I took myself to a load of conferences, and I eventually discovered some harsh realities, which are that ruminant animals are not only very important for the soil, and by the way, there is a very real environmental emergency going on because we are losing our topsoil at alarming rates, and what mineral value and vitality there is left in the soil is almost gone as well. So there is a very real environmental emergency going on, but it's not going on above our heads, it's going on beneath our feet. And what's more, I realized that the meat of ruminant animals was also extremely important for human health. So I started looking into that, bumped into Phil, and we've been working together for a few years. We've written a couple of books, including more recently, The Red Pill Food Revolution and The Red Pill Revolution. And like Phil says, we run the Big Fat Challenge where we help people over 90 days to switch their diets and reclaim their health. And that seems to be a unifying theme with us, I think, Nickita, because Phil and I in the food and nutrition space, and you in pregnancy and childbirth, I would say that there's a common thing that we're all finding ourselves clashing heads against a an information and educational system and a top-down control structure that wants to tell people how to be healthy and happy, but actually delivers precisely the wrong results. Is that your experience?
Yes. So what really alarms me, and for those of you watching who think, oh, I've stopped having babies now, or I'm a man, it's nothing to do with me, I urge you to listen, because you will know someone who's pregnant. It might be your daughter, a sister, and it's so important. In my experience, the common ailments that you see during pregnancy, such as preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, and even real emergencies such as placental abruption, which is where the placenta separates from the uterine wall prematurely. Most of these things can be prevented by nutrition and understanding the importance of protein. But if Jane Doe goes through systemic care, she'll have her booking an appointment with the midwife, and they'll have like these check boxes: any mental health, either tick or no tick. And then it will say, have you discussed nutrition with the patient? And they'll say, do you eat well? And I'll say, yeah. That's nutrition done. Or they'll say, do you drink alcohol? Do you smoke? Now, this is quite important on a side note. So when they're doing all their checks, do you smoke? Obviously, that's not a good idea in pregnancy. It will compromise oxygen flow to the placenta, and you'll end up with a calcified placenta and often a baby underweight. But they'll say, don't drink, don't smoke, don't dye your hair, don't eat liver, and don't eat certain cheeses. But when you're in labor, we will pump you full of opiates. Okay. What? And it's so shocking. So just briefly for your audience, this is how important protein is. Now, I'm not an advocate per se of the carnivore diet for pregnancy. I myself eat a high protein diet, but I don't agree with a dogmatic approach. You should be eating this, you should be eating that. I'm more for like intuitive eating and ancestral, right? And I don't like telling people what to do, full stop. But I can tell you from my experience what I see. Now, when a woman is pregnant, she needs to expand her blood volume by up to 60%. And in order to do that, the liver has to perform 500 metabolic functions. Isn't that amazing, right? That is a lot. Part of which is to produce albumin, which is like an egg white sort of substance. Let's take preeclampsia, for example, a very common problem that if you're in the maternity system and they'll check your blood pressure and they'll say, oh, it's high, could be preeclampsia, we better induce you. And then the woman asks, why does this happen? And they say, we don't really know, but it might be genetic. Well, that's not a good enough answer, because the truth is, when it comes down to a nutritional reason, I'm not saying there aren't other reasons, but for the most part, this is the reason for preeclampsia. If the woman is not producing her blood volume in an optimal way, the body thinks the body is hemorrhaging. So what it does, it starts to draw water out of all the cells and hold water. What happens when we hold water? Blood pressure goes up. This is a very black and white, simplistic explanation, but I have blogs. You can read all about protein and blood volume expansion. But essentially, this is a cause for preeclampsia, and the main cause in my experience. So midwives aren't taught this during their training. You certainly won't hear it from an obstetrician. And women are going through the system. They start there happy and healthy, and they leave downtrodden, broken, and have a feeling like their body has failed them. When their body has not failed them. In fact, it's done the opposite. It's trying to help them. But just a little bit of education, will go a long way when it comes to nutrition. You need 100 grams of protein a day. This is called the brewer's diet. A doctor called Tom Brewer understood the correlation between protein and blood volume expansion. If you search up Dr. Tom Brewer, you will find a plethora of information surrounding various pregnancy ailments. This is not taught. I teach it on my courses. I had a woman a year ago. She was about 30 weeks pregnant, and she'd had a scan, and they said the baby's abdominal circumference was far too big, indicating gestational diabetes. And she called me one of the days because I fainted. So I went over, and she was a friend of mine, luckily, so I could be quite open and I didn't have to mince my words. And I said, "What are you eating?" She went, "Oh, a lot of cake." I went, "We better fucking pack that in, like, and buck your ideas up." So I put her straight on the brewer's diet, and within 10 days, no sign of gestational diabetes, nothing. And she had a very healthy, beautiful baby born at home with no problems. Now, I'm speaking of this like simplistically. There are lots of variations with pregnancy, but I'm trying to get a point across that nutrition is really bloody important, and understanding protein. So I want to ask you guys something now. So I found myself at a festival last year, predominantly with a lot of vegans. And father came up to me and said, "Oh, my wife had a lovely home birth, and because we're vegan, and that's why she had a healthy pregnancy." And I asked him, how did she get all of her 9 amino acids without protein, like animal-based protein? "Oh, you can do that." And I thought, but we don't have as many stomachs as a cow, so how can we do that? Does anyone know the answer to that?
Well, they are actually all in soy. The problem is that there's an awful lot of other stuff in soy as well, such as 1 million nanograms of phytoestrogen per 4 ounces, which is like a cup full of soybeans. And if you think about, I think the average fertile woman's body creates something like 250,000 nanograms per day, and the birth control pill has maybe around 150 nanograms. 150,000 nanograms is enough to tell your body that it's pregnant. And there's like 6 or 7 times that in a cup of soybeans. And there's lectins, and there's all kinds of other stuff. But yes, it is possible to get all of the amino acids, the 9 essential ones. There's also one as well that is it carnitine that like 1 in 4 people can't synthesize. I can't remember that one, Phil. But
I don't know. Caroline would know. We've got a carnivore GAPS practitioner at When Push Comes to Shove, and she'll know all this. But yeah, that's really. Can we talk about lectins for a second? That's really important. You know far more about it than I do. So can you just explain what lectins are, what food they're in, and what it does to your body?
Well, lectins are just one of the many plant toxins. And as Ben said, you can on paper get these amino acids and whatever from plants, but because of the anti-nutrients and because of the fiber, the indigestible cellulose that they're wrapped up in, they're not very bioavailable. So it doesn't translate into what's absorbed. It's not what's in the food, it's what's absorbed. So in meat, we absorb everything, and there's no toxins at all. But in every plant, there are toxins. I mean, 99% of the plants that grow out there will land you in hospital or kill you if you eat them. And the other ones still have toxins. As our friend Anthony Chaffee says, 136 carcinogens in an organic Brussels sprout. So some people get really fixated on individual toxins, but there are so many in there. Lectins are a rather nasty one. Not, in my opinion, the nastiest. I think I'd have to give the crown to oxalates, having writhed around in pain with kidney stones from spinach smoothies myself. Very, very dangerous. Spinach is very, very toxic. Lectins are in an awful lot of things. Tons in beans, for example. Like Ben said, if you've got the soybeans or any other kind of beans and you're relying on that for protein, you're taking in lectins. Lectins will destroy the gut. They'll make the gut leaky. they get through and give all sorts of joint problems, all kinds of toxic effects in the body. But yeah, it's one of the nastier ones. But it's funny because what was it? Stephen Gundry got really obsessed with lectins in his book. You know, I can't remember what it was called now, Gundry's book, but it was a weird book that was telling you about all these toxins and whatever, and how toxic plants were, and how you should eat them all in the second half of the book. So I don't really understand what he was on about there. I think it was just another way that the Seventh-day Adventists get through with a little bit of controlled opposition or a bit of a shit sandwich in the information, you know. But yeah, it's pretty nasty. I mean, I don't know if you have anything more technical on lectins there, Ben. Just don't eat them because they're nasty and they'll wreck your gut and they hurt like hell. I tell you, if you've got rheumatoid arthritis and you eat something with lectins in, they go straight through a leaky gut. They hurt like hell. They're horrible.
Let's talk about gut. Let's talk about gut health. They say that your gut health is your second brain, right? And how what we eat is so important. The brain gut connection with health, our overall health. So Ben, do you want to explain exactly what gut health is? Talk about the microbiome, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, we can touch on it. I think the key thing is, yes, but also your gut and the bacteria in your gut. By the way, there's more bacteria in your gut, 10 times more bacteria in your gut than there are human cells in your body. So, you know, we are, as I'm fond of saying, a hot, wet bag of microbial mush. You know, you are not you. We are host to many more alien cells than we have our own. By the way, sorry, I've just looked up this thing. 3 ounces of beef contains 2 nanograms of estrogen. Just to clarify, one birth control pill, 35,000 nanograms. A fertile woman, 150 to 180,000. And like we say, 3 ounces of soy, 1 million nanograms of estrogen, just to clarify earlier on. So, but what's really interesting is that these bacteria, microbes in your gut create a large percentage of the neurotransmitters that you need for your body to function. But things like now why are the words leaving your happy hormones? What are the happy hormones?
Oxytocin.
Yeah, serotonin, and of course the other one, dopamine as well. These are actually created in the gut, and they're not created by our own cells. They're created by the bacteria, and then they are moved up to the brain where they can be used. But see, a lot of people are really obsessing about gut health these days. I think the bottom line with gut health is the microbiome in your gut will adjust itself to the food that you eat, right? And so, I mean, when we're coaching people, we say, really don't worry too much about it. Just don't eat stuff that wrecks your gut and wrecks the gut lining. So lectins, like Phil said, open up the endothelial junctions between the endothelial cells, allowing all kinds of crap into your body, including things as big as bacteria, proteins, lectins themselves, which are glycoproteins and can attach to technically any cell in your body, because every cell has receptors that have a carbohydrate ending on them, and different lectins can bind to those. They can create systemic inflammation, all kinds of horrible things. But yeah, in addition to that, you want to minimize stress. That's very important. And of course, that's a key factor in your line of work as well. Stress is related to so many issues. Avoid excess alcohol, all those kinds of things. That's just for keeping the gut wall itself intact. Other than that, and oral antibiotics, crikey. Oral antibiotics lay waste to your digestive system, because it's the way you need to think about it is it's like a garden, right? If you've got a good garden where stuff grows and it's healthy and it grows well, it's all to do with the soil. And I came into all of this from gardening. And as Natasha Campbell McBride says, who's the author of GAPS, which is a gut and psychology syndrome, and then now also gut and physiology syndrome, where she says, like Hippocrates said 2,500 years ago, all disease begins in the gut. And he was absolutely right. And Natasha has done amazing work on that as well. Just don't damage it. And also, we're kind of dubious about the idea of probiotics as well, and probably unless you have undergone a dose of oral antibiotics. But yeah, I mean, we can't stress enough the importance of it. But really, the best thing that you can do is to eat real, natural food and let your gut biome take care of itself. I think it's fair to say.
Well, what I'd add to that is that, you know, everybody's obsessed with the microbiome and they think a diverse microbiome is very healthy. We don't know. Nobody knows. As Sean Baker put it, a healthy microbiome is one that a healthy person has, and that varies widely. And it varies, like Ben says, for different foods that you put in it. You know, certain bacteria will come up to protect you against the plants you're eating. Sorry, I have to get that in. We don't need them. Sometimes on a carnivore diet, if somebody goes onto a carnivore diet, their microbiome can become more diverse. Sometimes it simplifies, but they always seem to be healing. The microbiome is the study of it is a very, very young science. And a lot of it came about from studying the Hadza, who have a very diverse microbiome, a tribe in Africa. And yet, you know, they eat loads of plants, so they say, but they actually don't. They don't eat anywhere near as many as they say they do. And when they eat starchy stuff, they quite often just chew it and spit it out, you know, to get something out of it, because they know that fiber is actually very harmful and it causes all the problems it's said to cure. If you take all the fiber out of your diet, your gut health improves massively, you know, and I'm not talking about microbiome study of it or anything, but just, you know, digestion and elimination becomes very, very comfortable and regular. And people sort of say, it's one of the things people say when you go carnivore. Do you have a poo? How do you have a poo without fiber? It's perfect. It's really easy. It's fine.
It reverses constipation. There's a study, 30-odd people with idiopathic constipation. They got
64
to cut out
64.
the fiber, and they all got better.
Yeah, they all got better. And you find that study on PubMed, and at the end of it, they say, I think we're going to have to seriously reconsider the role of fiber in the diet. And that study's kind of been buried because everybody wants to say that fiber's necessary. Bizarre. It is bizarre. But yeah, with the microbiome, so, you know, you've got the Hadza there and they've got all this diverse microbiome or whatever, but it's probably nothing to do with them eating more plants, which they actually don't particularly. But it's to do with the fact that they're drinking this water that would probably, you know, put us on the toilet for a week at least, if not in hospital. And they don't wash their hands. They don't wash they don't wash their utensils. They don't, you know, and so they're getting a lot of different bacteria in there, and seeding the gut all the time. Whereas, you know, the Maasai down the road are even more healthy than the Hadza because, well, they don't eat plants, you know, blood, milk, and meat. That's it. And they're kind of 7 foot tall and they look way better than the Hadza. And they have, I've heard, a more simplified microbiome. So we don't understand. All we can do is that we need to just eat, like Ben says, what we're supposed to eat, you know, and that's not necessarily fully carnivore. We're not dogmatic at all either. I do it because I have autoimmunity, and people who have autoimmunity really should, because that is one time where I'd say, yeah, definitely. But, you know, eating seasonal berries and fruit and nuts and whatever, and meat and mixing it up a bit really is not it's going to keep a healthy person healthy for life. It's just those of us who have been messed about by incorrect diet information, like the mainstream stuff, the vegan stuff, whatever we've got caught up in, and destroyed our guts so badly that then, you know, we have to be very strict from now on. But yeah, the microbiome, anyone who says they're an expert on it is lying.
Yeah.
There's no such thing yet.
As in so many aspects of what we do, the key, and with Phil as well, helping so many people to reverse their health issues. The key to it so often is just to get the hell out of your own way, because your body is incredibly good at healing. Your body will heal itself. You can cut out half of your liver, even if the rest of it's diseased. And as long as you just stop messing with it, your liver will regrow again, perfectly healthy. Every bit of your body has the ability to heal itself. The problem is the interventions that we put in the way of that, and stress.
Yeah, I think a lot of issues with the scientific community when it comes to studies. I take great issue with the studies when it comes to maternity care, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But like what you were saying with the vegetables that particular tribe were eating, you know, correlation isn't causation. And a lot of the time, you know, we hear hooves and we think it's a horse. Sometimes it's a zebra. I think it's really important to take in all considerations, all factors. So about maternity care, for example, this is what I hear come up time and time again. When I say to people, you do realize birth trauma is common, not normal. And then I'll get a reply, well, I actually had to have a C-section because I was high risk and I had to do this. And I, you know, not that I'd ever come back at someone and say, well, no, you didn't, because obviously sometimes there are such things as a genuine emergency. But when I hear women's stories, I think that was not informed consent. Now, maternity care, if you're looking at evidence, it's as little as 8% category A evidence-based. That's like the lowest evidence-based in medicine there is. And according to the Cochrane report, maternity care, what did he say? I think they got the paper award for evidence. Like, it was just so crap. So when you are being told by your midwife or your doctor, you've got to go in to be induced because you've got a big baby. And women go, yeah, sure. Because they hand over their health and they hand over responsibility because they are afraid. You don't have enough education. Now, to be honest with you, birth education, I think, is actually quite superficial. If you can't do the inner work and understand where your core wounds have come from and why you can't advocate for yourself and why we're repeating this generational trauma of patterns, all this education is pointless. It's bringing them together. This is why on my doula course, the first module is about healing, understanding trauma, self-development. What are your core wounds? Because we've got so many women in birth getting about the place who can't regulate their emotions, who have got so much trauma themselves, and they're meant to be supporting someone in a sacred moment in their life, and they're reacting instead of responding, and they're passing on generational trauma to the next and the next and the next. And this is what we have to stop. But anyway, I digress. So let's say, for example, a woman's told you've got to have a big baby. They will never ask, well, what's this based on, please? Why can't I have a big baby? I remember my mentor, Beverly Beach, who died last year. She said to me when I was very green as a birth keeper, I rang her and I was like, oh, I've got a client and she's 4'11", and the obstetrician's telling her she's too small to give birth. And she went, Nickita, what do Shetland ponies give birth to? I said, Shetland ponies. She went, there you are. She goes, it's not going to outgrow the mother. It's not a goldfish in a bath. Like, it's not going to happen. So that was a light bulb moment for me. And I thought, hang on, what's this based on? What study is this based on? Now, the problem is, and I'm going to quote Beverly Beach again, because I saw her have the most incredible conversation with an obstetrician when they were talking about evidence. The obstetrician quite arrogantly said to Beverly, there is nothing you can tell me that I don't already know about birth. And she said, you cannot understand the behavior of birds by observing them in a zoo. And that's all the obstetrician sees, the zoo animals. This is under scientific observation, under bright lights, hearing beeping machines, hearing other women give birth. When birth is being studied in this environment, how can we conclude that these studies are conducive to physiological birth outcomes? We can't. So if you want to understand how a physiological birth unfolds with a woman over 40 years old, but you're looking at these studies within a hospital environment, well, that's about as useful as a letterbox on a tombstone. It's not going to help women make an informed decision. What is going to help them is if we have women-centered care. Let's take the advanced age bollocks that women are told, oh, you're over 35, you're high risk, your chances of stillbirth double. Double of what? Is 1 in 5 to 2 in 5, or is it 1 in 500 to 2 in 500? Because it's a big difference. So they say, yeah, you're far too old to have a healthy baby, and we're going to have to induce you at 38, 39 weeks. Now, bear in mind, some babies need to be cooked until up to 43 weeks. So you could be inducing a 5-week premature baby, but that's okay because guidelines say so. So what women tend to do is just go along with it. But what I would encourage you to do is ask questions. I'm not here to tell you not to have an induction. There's already a system that tells women what to do, and I don't want any part of it. I am interested in empowerment, helping women find their own superpower and ask questions to make an informed decision. So if they're saying you've got to be induced, why don't you start with this question? What percentage of babies in your hospital that are induced end up in the neonatal intensive care unit, please? What percentage of induced babies end up with an emergency cesarean section? Can you please define big, if it's a big baby? Is it normal in nature for babies to outgrow their mothers? Now, what they are worried about is something called a shoulder dystocia, which is where the baby's shoulders get stuck. So you might want to ask them, if you're concerned about a shoulder dystocia, do your midwives not know how to handle a shoulder dystocia? And what percentage of women that experience a shoulder dystocia at your trust are on their back giving birth? And what percentage of those were induced? The plot thickens. Now, an older woman will be told you've got to be induced, as I was saying earlier, but then I went off on one, as I tend to do. But let's take two avatars of women. Let's take a 42-year-old woman. She takes impeccable care of her health. She's a yoga instructor. She doesn't bombard herself with stress factors like watching the mainstream news, buying into all that. She meditates daily. She's got an excellent protein intake, and she's got a very balanced mind, body, soul connection to health. Let's take a 21-year-old who smokes 20 a day, who eats McDonald's and Domino's, and she's still having the odd drink. She doesn't exercise. She sleeps too much. That 21-year-old, after that first conversation that I mentioned earlier with the midwife, well, that won't come to light. But that 21-year-old will be low risk, and that 42-year-old will be high risk. What the fuck?
And how many of those kids think, oh, if I smoke 20 a day, I'll have a smaller baby and an easier birth? Oh my God. So, right, Nickita, I think there's another parallel here between what we do and what you do and what we kind of faced up against, which is this pervasive myth that you've got to be an expert in order to understand something as complicated as A, gestation and childbirth, or B, what to eat. And it makes us pull out, you've already mentioned studies. Where's the studies and stuff like that? Who are you? You're not a doctor. Phil's actually got a blog post about this. Who the hell are you? You're not a doctor. How can you possibly advise people on what to eat? People have been putting food in their mouths, right? Procreating and having babies for an awful long time before anyone invented a white coat.
Yeah, I've got a post too about it called "Trust the Experts?" ? Now, I get this all the time, and I was actually labouring under a misapprehension for quite a long time that I needed letters behind my name to be taken seriously. I even went to med school, dropped out almost immediately, but then I thought, hang on, I know what I'm talking about. I've been doing this a long time, and I know physiological birth. I know it well. My clients, my personal C-section rate is 3%. The NHS is nearly 50%. So anyway, I think, women need to make an informed choice. And if they're not happy with someone who hasn't got letters behind their name, don't do it. It's not like anyone's forcing you to take advice. You don't have to. But the very truth of it here, as you just mentioned, Ben, is we've been doing this for millennia. And I think half the problem, well, most of the problem, to be honest, is fear. So midwives are very fearful of women who have done their own research and who actually connect to themselves. If a woman was in a coma, so they're not able to hear a midwife going, "You're doing it wrong, push," or "No, not yet," they'd still bloody give birth. Their head doesn't need any input into the process. It will just happen. Imagine there was someone, right, vomiting, That's a physiological process. It's a byproduct of the body trying to do something. Something's not right, it needs to come out. When in the case of childbirth, something has to come out because it's right, and this is what we have to do. If you were vomiting and someone said to you, stop, no, don't vomit yet, wait. Okay, now do it. Fuck off. And we have midwives telling us, stop pushing, don't push, no, all right, push now, coach pushing. You're doing it wrong. What? We have been hardwired with this blueprint of birth. We know how to do it. My friend's cat gave birth yesterday. She's a very young cat. She's just had her first litter. Guess what? No one told her what to do or how to do it, or made her fearful that she couldn't do it, because she's not suffering with metacognition. She's not suffering with an ego. She's not handing her birth over. She just listened to her body. And I'm not here to say that nothing ever goes wrong, because birth, to be quite honest, is not inherently safe, but it's certainly not inherently dangerous. Neither is life. Sometimes things happen, and sometimes we will never know the reason why. But to tell women, like, to pathologize a natural process and to say you all better come in at 38 weeks and we'll induce you just in case, that is akin to giving everyone chemo just in case they get cancer. We are taking women's power away. No wonder women can't get in touch with their wisdom, because they're in their ego all the time. And I don't mean ego as in narcissistic. I mean your thought process, your identification of who you are. You've handed it over. We're in a fear culture. Midwives are afraid to get sued. Midwives have got a script of what birth should look like, and no wonder they're afraid of birth, because all they see is intervention after intervention after intervention. My colleague Angela Chamberlain, she co-founded Artemis Academy with me. She left midwifery because she was sick of it and seeing pathologized birth after pathologized birth. And she was meeting third-year midwifery students who have never, ever seen a physiological birth. Like, no induction, no CTG monitoring. And she was like, this is horrific. We have to carry on the ancient wisdom. And our mantra is, we don't need to criticize, we just need to create. There's a difference between judgment and discernment. Yes, there are lots of things wrong with the maternity system, but it's about noticing it. Don't hook into it. Don't get into that fear state. You don't need to do that. Just educate and come down here to trust. Your roots create your fruits in every sense. And if you're fearful and anxious and you've got this script in your head, you might have a fear of authority, it's going to keep showing up in your life in one form or another. But if you connect your intelligence with your wisdom and have a beautiful balance, you will be able to advocate for yourself. You will be able to listen to your baby and trust that all is well. And also, you will be able to say, hang on, I know, not think, I know something's wrong. I've never seen a woman's instinct wrong when push comes to shove. Literally.
Yeah. And this is exactly what they do with when you get diagnosed with something as well. It's all the fear mongering. You know, they told me if you don't take these pills, you're going to be in a wheelchair and it's incurable and all of that sort of thing. And I've seen these sort of inflammatory arthritis reversed so many times, because you just say, well, listen, you've messed up, but here's a way out, and you're going to come out the other side even better, and it's going to be a great journey. And at the end of a consult, they're smiling. But I've been into a rheumatologist and you come out freaked out, completely freaked out and ready to do what they say. Well, I wasn't, because I'm a bit rebellious. I knew I'd find a way out, even though I didn't know what it was at the time. But, you know, most people, they just get caught in that. And the same fear is around childbirth. Now, I had Mary Ruddick on my podcast. I don't know if you've come across her, Nickita, but she's amazing. And she, you know, she was kind of bedridden from veganism and fixed herself on, you know, high fat carnivore, and now goes around the world and just lives with all these tribes from the Arctic, the Amazon, Africa, everything. The sort of tribes that people normally don't go and see because it's days down the Amazon or whatever, horrible, great treks. And, you know, the sort of places where the modern medicine has not encroached, neither is the modern junk food, and neither is artificial light, which, as you mentioned, you know, you're giving birth stuck in stirrups under artificial light. And what a horrible way for a child to come into the world through in that horrible glaring nonsense and EMFs and everything around. And I was asking her about childbirth, and because there's a bit of a myth that these indigenous tribes, number one, they don't live very long, and they do. Some of them get way over 100 and they're in incredibly good health. And that there's a high mortality rate, you know, among in childbirth. And it's not the case. And she was talking to say, no, it's very easy and stuff like that. I mean, the advantage that we have is that if they fall out of a tree and get a bad break in their leg, it might well kill them. Whereas we have A&E and you know, or casualty, or whichever you know, the ER, whichever country you're watching this in. But that's useful, that kind of medicine. But this overcomplicating of everything, these people are having perfectly easy, but it's like, what's the problem? Yeah, we give birth. That's it. And the babies are healthy. They don't have a high mortality rate and they have very easy births. They're eating what they're supposed to eat. They're out in nature, the right light. They've got people there who've seen it, other women to help them, you know, their own versions of doulas or whatever, who have seen this many times before to go and help them. And they're not paranoid about it. It's just everything these days goes back to fear, doesn't it? Which is basically the opposite of love. That's our problem.
Fear consciousness. Like, I think people take this literally in specific circumstances, but it's not. We have created a consciousness. It's like a spiritual malignancy. And there's only two core emotions, and that's love and fear. If everything is stemming from fear, we see things like 2020 happen, because you're kind of pushing it out more and more, and it's expanding and expanding, and it's contagious. But we need to make decisions from love. And Phil, what you just said about the indigenous cultures not having problems in childbirth, that's absolutely right. There's a book called Childbirth from the World's Oldest Societies by Judith Goldsmith. And she says when communities are well nourished, they're not in survival mode, they have a very low mortality rate. Don't listen to the myths. And when people say to me, well, women used to die all the time in childbirth and then medicine came. Well, yeah, they did, and they still are. And for the same reasons, malnutrition, and poverty, basically. So if you're living in an overcrowded environment, you're not eating well, disease spreads. Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster, which was the case a lot in the early 1900s, late 1800s. That's why I hear about childbed fever. Of course, I didn't understand about infections, Semmelweis, all that. Anyway, I won't go into that today. And then there's a genuine medical condition. Let's say you maybe been in a car accident, you've got pins in your pelvis. That's going to be a mechanical problem for childbirth. But the biggest cause, in my opinion, that I have seen in 15 years doing what I'm doing, that birth goes wrong, is over medicalization. So let's take induction, right? So a lot of women choose their date. Now, I'm going to go in and have the baby on this day. Well, look, no, it won't happen like that. It's very unlikely. And if they say you've got to be induced and they say come in next Wednesday, you've got to think to yourself, how urgent is it that they've scheduled it for next week? Is it really that urgent? So you'll go in and they'll start you off with something called Propes or Prostin, which is a prostaglandin gel, and try and ripen your cervix to start things dilating and contracting and such. Now, 9 times out of 10, they bring out the big guns, and this drug is called syntocinon. If you're watching in the States, it's called Pitocin, and it's a drip, an intravenous drip, and it's synthetic form of oxytocin. It does not work like natural oxytocin. It doesn't reach your brain. It doesn't give you that lovely euphoria. What it does do is it can overstimulate your uterus. So you're getting these contractions over and over and over again. So it tends to be a lot more intense and painful. So quite understandably, a woman asks for an epidural. They don't tell you what's in the epidural. Part bupivacaine, part fentanyl, by the way. They'll put that in your spine. That will put you on your back. Gravity's not working to bring the baby down. You're essentially trying to push uphill and you can't feel when to push. So they up the syntocinon because it slowed things down. Now, during this time, you may not be feeling the extra pain of these contractions, but because your uterus is being pounded over and over again, it compromises the oxygen flow to the placenta. And then baby's not getting enough oxygen. And then the beeping machines go off. Baby's in distress. We've got to get the baby out. cesarean section. And then women end up with almost some sort of Stockholm syndrome, where they thank these people for saving them and their baby. And they think, well, if I'd have done that at home, that was me, by the way. That was me at 21. Oh my God, birth is so dangerous. Thank God I was at hospital. I never would have done that. If I wasn't there, that process wouldn't have started. And I would have listened to my body. Again, I'm not saying it goes right all the time, because of course there are going to be little hiccups and variations. We don't even know why sometimes. But I think we need to learn one thing from looking at the last century of obstetrics. We don't know enough, so leave it alone. In the 30s, they were giving women x-rays to make sure their pelvis was big enough, and it was giving babies cancer. And then in the 50s, there's thalidomide. And I don't need to explain what happened there. Then in the 90s, they were giving women a drug called Cytotec to induce labor with previous C-sections, and it ended up with hundreds and thousands of dead babies and ruptured uteruses. And then they had some sort of drug come out in 2021. But we won't go on on that today. I don't think we really need to give that much credence at the moment. But the point is, we know one thing: we don't know enough. Leave it alone.
Yeah, nature's been doing this for an awful long time. We haven't, and we're a long way off. So it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. We don't even know enough to know how little we understand about childbirth. And yet your body already had this before people started messing about and putting their hands where they didn't need to be at that time. But isn't that a really key feature in all of this, Nickita, which is the fact that there's that childbirth has a green light hormone and a red light hormone, the green light hormone being oxytocin, which you've mentioned several times, but adrenaline essentially puts the brakes on the whole birthing process. And what do? You say, well, you're going to come in, you're going to be in a strange place under artificial light. So when you're on your back, all you can see is like that. You're going to put you on your back. You're going to have a machine that goes ping when you don't expect it. And you're going to have somebody who walks in every 15 minutes to stick their hand up your foo-foo to check how things are getting along. And you're supposed to be all relaxed, you know what I mean, in this process, and enjoying the the whole experience. I mean, isn't the stimulation of adrenaline going to be like the first? So you're all, like you say, you're fighting an uphill battle from the start as soon as you go in there. Oh, take your clothes off as well. You don't need them. You don't need to be in any kind of familiarity. But isn't it true that in nature, a woman would just like take herself off somewhere dark, somewhere quiet, possibly into a body of water, into the sea or a river, so that there's no smell to attract predators, and just very casually and gently drop one out and then bring it? Or have I got a romanticized view there?
No, you haven't at all. So humans are mammals, and they naturally do what mammals do. They find somewhere dark, and like you said, maybe a body of water, because it's instinctual. And they will have their, I don't know if they get, you hear about, oh, women in Africa just have the babies and carry on working. Well, no, they might do, I don't know, but it's not a great idea. But we've got this westernized understanding of postnatal, where we have to get on with it and start working straight away when a woman's given birth. So first of all, the birth needs to be gentle and calm, and it doesn't need to be any drama. You shouldn't have anyone around you that's fearful. I mean, that's just not conducive to the birth we need. So the baby should come out without any conscious pushing, by the way. It's called the fetal ejection reflex. The baby will just come out. You can't help it. Your body just takes over. If someone told me to stop pushing, I'd be like, how's that possible? It's like saying stop being sick. You can't. So the baby should come into the world in a sea of oxytocin, not adrenaline, not cortisol. They should be caught by their mother's hands, not a gloved, scrubbed up doctor with a mask. Their mother's touch should be their first touch. I'm not saying I haven't caught a few babies, because I have, because sometimes mums are like, their head hasn't caught up with their body. You're not going to let the baby fall, but the mums need to touch their baby first, skin to skin. And what the most incredible thing you'll ever witness in a physiological birth. When the baby goes to the tummy, cord length permitting, they will start to do the birth crawl. They will literally crawl, newborn, up to the breast. Their hands and their feet pushing down on the tummy. That will start release of the placenta. Then they'll start rooting for the breast. That's more oxytocin to help contractions get the placenta out and to stop bleeding. And then afterwards, women just need to be, I mean, during birth as well, I always say this, you need to be the epitome of a human being, not a human doing, not a human becoming, just be, and allow this beautiful process to happen. You want to breastfeed successfully, get naked, get the baby naked, lay in bed and just smell. But what they do in hospital, they come in and they put a hat over the baby so you can't smell the baby and the baby can't smell you. This instant block. Well, we can't have the baby getting hypothermia. I am not saying that some babies do not get hypothermia, because they do, but you have to look at everything. In a physiological birth, what are the chances of a baby getting hypothermia? They're on mum's chest, they're covered in a blanket, they're warm. Mum needs to smell baby and baby needs to smell mum. It's part of the process. Then you've got to stay in bed, be looked after. In indigenous cultures, women look after women. They have the elders, the birth keepers of the village, which is exactly what we are training women to do at When Push Comes to Shove and Artemis Academy, to be that wise woman in the village, saying, no, don't get up. We will talk about rebozo techniques, closing the bones, wrapping women's tummies to close the bones. It's a really nice spiritual ceremony to allow mum to go back to herself and integrate into motherhood and leave maidenhood behind. It's so special and it's so sacred, but we rush. I'm going to stick a bottle in this baby's mouth because I've got to go back to work. And that's not to shame anyone, because we're on so much fear in life. We're very defensive and it's the blame game. And we hold other people responsible for our own feelings. When really, what do you feel? What do you want to do? Sometimes you can feel very scarce. There's like almost like a scarcity consciousness going on, that I have pressure to go back to work. I have to do this, I have to do that. But let's just take a minute to breathe and remember who we are. And the most important thing right now is you and your baby.
Yeah. And I'm sure I don't need to ask this, but what's the importance about maintaining the cord until all the blood's come through and the stem cells and everything like that?
So if you cut a baby's cord just after birth, the baby loses a third of its blood supply.
Which I'm guilty of that, by the way, myself. There's not many things I deeply regret in life. Cutting the cord and then taking both of my children for their infant jabs are two of my biggest regrets.
Well, don't regret it, because it's part of your journey that has brought you here today, and you don't know what you don't know. How can you make an informed decision without information? And it's the same with everything. Like I made huge mistakes as well with my first, and I'm pretty sure I've made mistakes with this one as well. But it's okay. It's part of the journey. But if you cut the cord straight away, a baby will lose a third of its blood supply. There's stem cells there. I mean, I can't believe I have to explain that babies need blood. But here we are. But it's not obvious, you know, it's not obvious. You think, oh, the cord can be discarded, and that's that. There's a lot of doctors saying that if you have delayed cord clamping, there's an association with jaundice. But I want to know more about that, because let's talk about vitamin K for a second, because this is a direct parallel. You know what I was saying earlier? We don't know enough. So babies are, we're told we have to give our babies vitamin K injection, because when they're born, they are lacking vitamin K. And I think, what? Like, to say you're depleted in something should mean that you should have it, but you don't have it. Well, if babies were meant to have it, shouldn't they just be born with it? But they're not. So why? Why? Has nature fucked up? Unlikely. I think we've probably got a lot of gaps in our knowledge. That's probably the likely scenario. So they're given this vitamin K, Oh, brilliant. We've just prevented vitamin K deficiency bleeding. So everyone should have it. Well, okay, ask them what percentage of babies actually experience vitamin K deficiency bleeding? What was their birth like? There are loads of layers, lots to unpack. Now, I've actually recently had a case with a woman who had her baby had vitamin K deficiency bleeding at 6 months. Unheard of. Never even seen that before. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But again, these are rare, and to the woman and the baby experiencing it, who gives a shit if it's rare? It's happening to them, right? So I get it. But that, what I'm trying to say is, we don't need to keep perpetuating that fear consciousness. The idea is we have to know about these rare occurrences to educate ourselves, but the best compass is here. What is your gut telling you? What is your divine feminine intuition saying? So what I'm saying about the parallel with the jaundice, with the delayed cord clamping and the vitamin K, is that a bad thing? What don't we know? Why are babies lacking in vitamin K? And guess where we have lots of vitamin K? Boobies. It's in our milk.
It's a fat soluble vitamin. It's going to come in, yeah, in that great store of Atkins keto nutrition. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you know, nutrition during pregnancy is so important. That's going to keep those nutrients up that the mother's going to be able to give to the baby. You can see with but with my kids, it's interesting because my missus was vegetarian for like 20 years. When we had my first with her, Amelia, who's now 15, coming up 16, and we were conned into a cesarean. And so she had, predictably, I would think, from not being seeded with the correct bacteria on actually being born, she had eczema and stuff, which cleared up kind of quite quickly, actually. But Peter, this next one, had it worse, but it's cleared up fine now. But he is, in general, much more healthy than Amelia, because for the second pregnancy, my missus went carnivore because she saw what it had done for me and said, I'm not doing that again, not to my baby. And the difference, one of the ways to tell is in the jaw formation. You can see with a lot of vegetarian and vegan kids, or whose parents were vegetarian or vegan during the pregnancy, that the jaws are quite narrow and the teeth are quite crowded. And my daughter has that. She's lovely, she's healthy, she's great, but her jaw is a lot narrower than my son, who was born when there was more nutrition going in during the pregnancy.
I was speaking to Marina Carew yesterday, who's a biological dentist, and she was talking about teeth crowding and narrow jaw, and she was correlating it with bottle-fed babies, because when you feed a baby with a bottle, they have to suck, whereas with a breastfed baby, it's all automated. It's like, so that's the nipple, it goes to the back of their mouth. They don't suck like this. It actually builds their jaw, and if their jaw is not built, their palate's not forming correctly, it can actually affect the rest of your body. So for example, scoliosis can happen if your jaw formation isn't correct, or if their bite is like this instead of like that. It's so fascinating. But there again, what more don't we know? Is there a correlation between, I'm going to talk to Marina about this definitely, but between the different,
Well, it's interesting with mine because they were both breastfed. We've not had bottle-fed babies. So that to me was the difference. When you look at sort of the work of Weston Price, and he went around early last century and looking at dental health among tribes and general health, and they found that on indigenous diets they all had beautifully spaced teeth, wide jaws, and as soon as the crap food came in, then there were these problems with the crowding of teeth. And
narrower noses, mouth breathing, tuberculosis, or chronic diseases. Yeah, incredible.
Mouth breathing is a big problem. It's a huge problem. Oh, I want to say as well to the viewers, right? So I get quite a few phone calls that are panicked. They're saying my baby has to have the vitamin K because of X, Y, and Z and this problem, and I'm terrified of. Or no, here's the big one. Anti-D. So women who are rhesus negative, they're terrified of having an anti-D injection because of the problems that their subsequent babies can have because of their blood type, and if they don't have the same blood type, blah blah blah. So I get lots of phone calls. Oh my god, I need anti-D. My baby's rhesus positive. I'm negative, but it's got blood products. What do I do? There's lots of fear in mainstream, but what I really want to gently say to you lot watching, even in the freedom movement, be careful, because you cannot fix a problem from the same level of energy that created it. And if you're watching people out there going fucking sheeple and blah blah blah, that's, you can't fight fire with fire. They're doing just as bad as the thing they're defending against. So don't buy into the fear. Don't hook in, right? If you've done all your research and you decide you're going to have anti-D, pick your battles. You can always detox afterwards and do your best to fix your gut health and any autoimmune disorders you've got. This is what Ben and Phil are here for. We have a huge network of people who are specialists in several different things within the freedom community. Utilize them. Don't hook into the fear. We saw the mainstream media doing it. Oh my God, everyone's dying of COVID. Oh my God, you've got to have this injection. Then you've got the freedom movement going, oh my God, they're such assholes. Like, don't buy into it. Don't hook into this. Just be, deduce. Okay, this person's saying this person's saying this. What do I think? Don't buy into the fear. You're not going to fix the problem. We attract what we defend against, right? We just need to find solutions, and it needs to be centered from love, and we need to create, not criticize. So if you're watching this and you're constantly scared from scrolling through social media, oh my God, and now they're doing this for social services, and now they're doing this with these injections, put your phone down and listen to your heart and maybe meditate for 20 minutes. I think you might find some better answers there. Just want to say my piece.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And it just takes you back to the ancestral thing, isn't it? I mean, it's disconnecting us. As well as fear mongering, it's disconnecting us from each other. It's so nice when you see kids playing together instead of being on the phone all the time. And that generation is just being taught that is what life is. And they'll be there sometimes, our kids have limited screen time, but sometimes I'll see and Peter's down here and they're playing Roblox or something, and they're on the same game and they're in the same room. It's like, hello, there you are. You're in front of each other. What's going on? And they make all their social interactions online and then they're also getting the EMFs, they're getting the blue light in, and that deranges all their hormones as well. And the modern way, it's all about finding out what the ancestral ways were, and it doesn't take much to fool your body into thinking that you are in that state. Get the light sorted in the houses, wear some blue blockers, have some red bulbs, don't watch TV after dark, go out in the morning and get the light in your eyes, get grounded now and again. Ben hardly ever wears shoes anymore. It gets above freezing and Ben's got no shoes on. And this is great, just get grounded all the time and get out in nature. Ben and I were speaking at a festival last weekend, and it's just come up online, and it was a great event. And then the Daz Band played afterwards, and there was all sorts of people there. And Dolores Cahill was there, who is absolutely wonderful. And she was just hugging and kissing me and asking for selfies after the Daz Band and whatever. And she became a great mate. She was partying with us around the fire pit till gone 2 in the morning. And this is it, just bringing people together. Round that fire pit was beautiful. People, Daz singing songs, another guy singing. Oh, what a beautiful thing I recorded of him doing this John Martin song, solo. But just that kind of social interaction that we don't have, that was so important, that campfire culture. And this is what they're trying to do, stay 6 feet apart, get in your screens, do all of this crap. Oh, let's shut the pubs down, the churches, whatever, where people used to meet. And it's all about getting back to that sort of ancestral feeling. You don't have to give up the mod cons. You've just got to make a few little tweaks. It's not very difficult. You don't have to go and live in a cave. You can, and this is what we do on our challenge and on the Zoom calls, and show people how to do that. And you're doing that with all the birthing, and it's just beautiful. It all ties in, and this is how we're going to bring everybody back together into a better sort of more localized culture rather than all this globalist bullshit, you know? There we go. It's my
I love
rant.
that. I think for me that picture of people sitting around the campfire as a tribe speaks volumes, because it's a circle as well, and which is the opposite of the triangle, of the pyramid, which is what we're told. They literally had a food pyramid a few years ago, which is what we fight against, and they have this top-down control structure. You have to follow these procedures and guidelines and stuff like that. You have to do it this way. You have to teach this, and so on and so forth. But the reality is that we are in general much better off. Now, there are some amazing things that modern medicine can do, right? Scan your heart, find a faulty valve, and operate to replace it. That's a miracle as far as I'm concerned. The majority of what modern medicine does, particularly when it comes to anything chronic, is trash and far too reliant on drugs. But the reality is that we know, nature knows, humans have been doing this for a long time, and we've been doing it in tribes. And I think that one of the most poignant and important words that you said, Nickita, earlier on, is you described your organization as decentralized. Like Jack Kruse talks about decentralizing medicine and the importance of that. And that's what we're doing. We're decentralizing nutrition and health through that way. Just stop going to the pyramid structure for your information. Trust your body, trust your own experience as well. Very, very important. More than anything else, trust the tribe, because the knowledge is there. It's already there in Mother Nature. And it is there that we can tap into straight away. But I think a key thing is just to trust yourself, trust nature, trust the process.
Absolutely, you have to trust yourself. And guys, you have a tree of life at your disposal. You have a connection. You've got Phil, you've got Ben, we've got Jacqueline Dunn, we've got Doc Malik, we've got all these incredible people who are specialists in their own rights. Use us. We've got the PHA. We've got all these fantastic people getting about the place who have got ancient wisdom who you can utilize. And I want to make this really clear, right? I wrote a Substack the other day, a message to the unborn souls. And I want to make a promise, right, to our children, that we have to do better, and we will do better. And we have to fix our core wounds. We need to cut this ancestral trauma, and we are doing it. If we want our children and our great grandchildren to have a better life, we have to do this inner work, and we have to live from love, not the emotion, the state of being. We are endless love and light at our core. And it's akin to thinking that the sky is sometimes grey. The sky is always blue, guys. There's just sometimes clouds in the way. We are light. Darkness is not a thing. It's the absence of a thing, which is light. So shine your light. This is how we're going to get through. You need to remember who you are. We need a great remembering that we are all connected. If you judge someone else, you're judging yourself, and it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt the greater consciousness. So look to your fellow brothers and sisters with love and compassion. Get out of your own way and be a human being. And I promise, if you trust and let the greater consciousness carry you, you will be surprised with what happens. Trust the process, guys. Heal yourself. Get onto some beautiful spiritual psychotherapy. Whatever modality works for you, begin to heal, because we have to do better for our babies, and we are doing better for our babies. This next lot coming in, you watch what they do. You watch. It's going to be remarkable. Anyway, I think my piece is done. Peace on earth begins at birth. I love you all. Thank you so much for watching. And guys, this has been amazing. Thank you.
That's a great way to end. That's beautiful, that, Nickita. And just anybody, you know, who's watching, have a look below, check out the links to Nickita's When Push Comes to Shove and Artemis and anything else, and our Substacks, Big Fat Challenge. It'll all be down there, and get in touch, and look forward to meeting some of you.
Really,
thank you for watching, guys, and thanks Ben and Phil for doing this with me today. It's been amazing. So lots of love.
Thank you.